Parivajagacharya, Ashwatthara Shri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Goswami Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava ki jai. Samaveda Bhaktivedanta ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Sri. So we have come to the 5th chapter, text 18. So in the 5th chapter, briefly reviewing, began, Arjuna was asking that, first of all, you asked me to renounce work, and then you recommend work with devotion. Please tell me definitely which of the two is more beneficial. So Krishna answers clearly that both renunciation of work and work in devotion are both good for liberation, but of the two, work in devotion is better. Prabhupada points out that this instruction is especially aimed at Arjuna. Krishna wanted him to fight. Arjuna, in the beginning, he didn't want to fight. So Krishna is saying working in devotion or fighting is better than renouncing work or giving up the fighting. Then Krishna says that the two paths called Sankhya and Yoga, that only those who are ignorant see a difference between the two. That if you perfect one, you get the result of both. So the idea is that any genuine path is meant for attaining the platform of the supreme or immortality. So because the goal is the same, ultimately, the different paths, although appearing to be different, are actually one. So then Krishna talks about the person who is engaged in works of devotion, that such a person who is self-realized knows that he's not the body, but is engaging the body as well as mind and words in works of devotion. Such a person, he is never entangled. And because he is surrendered to the will of Krishna, or the will of the Lord, he knows that actually he is not doing anything, but he is simply acting as the instrument. He is acting instrumentally to carry out the will of Krishna. So such a person never acts for his own account. It is said that such a person doesn't cause others to act, and he is not himself the cause of the result of activities. So then in verse 16, Krishna said, when one is enlightened with the knowledge by which nescience is destroyed, that knowledge reveals everything as the sun lights up everything in the daytime. So when one's mind, intelligence, and faith and refuge are all fixed in the Supreme, then one becomes fully cleansed of all misgivings through complete knowledge, and thus proceeds straight on the path of liberation. So in text 18, Krishna says, the humble sages, by virtue of true knowledge, see with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmin, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog-eater. So this verse is very often referred to by Prabhupada. So it is an important thing to understand in Bhagavad Gita. Here it is mentioned different kinds of living entities. The Brahmana, the dog-eater, cow, and elephant. And it says that one who is Pandit, he is Samadarshi, he sees everyone equally. So how is it possible to see everyone equally? Of course, the simple answer is that it is only the bodies of the different living entities which are different, but the actual living self or soul within the bodies are all qualitatively and quantitatively the same. It's not that within an elephant there is a bigger soul, and within an ant there is a smaller soul. The same soul may in one birth have the body of an elephant, and another birth may have the body of an ant. That the designations of the body in no way characterize the soul or the true self. So those who have actually attained the perfection of knowledge or who have become fully purified, whose senses are purified and not contaminated, and who can therefore see things as they are, they see that the true living entity within all bodies is one and the same. And such persons, they don't take into much account the condition of the body. So of course, if we think of ourselves, then even though we may have some little kind of theoretical understanding of the soul or self, different from the body, if we see our own mental activities, we see we are not like this. We treat different living entities differently according to their body. Too much so. And of course, this is interesting because if you look at the world situation, if you look at the news and try to judge the world situation, you see that practically all the problems of the world are due to a lack of this understanding. That why are people fighting? Because they're not samadarshi. They don't see others equally with themselves. So one should in the beginning understand this theoretically, and although one cannot genuinely see others equally, still by having a theoretical understanding, one can at least practice and therefore control the mind, which is accustomed to thinking that that person is handsome or beautiful, I like, that person is old or ugly, I don't like, or this animal deserves to be killed just for food, or I don't like black people, or this or that, whatever. One may still have these feelings because attraction and repulsion, this was stated, I think, in the second chapter. Attraction and repulsion are felt by all embodied beings. We are embodied beings, therefore we feel attraction and repulsion. But those who are actually pandita, or very learned or self-realized souls, they don't feel attraction and repulsion on that material platform. So this would just remain very theoretical, but we had the good fortune of experiencing Prabhupada. And he actually, we could see that he actually was such a person situated above attraction and repulsion, that when he related to the people who came to him, he didn't relate to them according to their bodily condition, but he spoke to them as spirit souls, part and parcel of Krishna. He never favored one kind of bodily designation over another. Of course, according to his body, apparently he is Indian, but he didn't favor Indians over Westerners. So in that way, Prabhupada, he accepted anyone without any consideration of whether they were young or old, beautiful or ugly, black or white, Russian or American or Indian or Chinese or African or whatever. So, of course, we are not on this platform, but at least we can practice. When we see ourselves differentiating according to the bodily conception, we can check ourselves and say, this is not good. I'll just read a little bit of the purport. A Krishna conscious person does not make any distinction between species or castes. The Brahman and the outcast may be different from the social point of view, or a dog, a cow, and an elephant may be different from the point of view of species, but these differences of body are meaningless from the viewpoint of a learned transcendentalist. This is due to their relationship to the Supreme. For the Supreme Lord, by his plenary portion as Paramatma, is present in everyone's heart. Such an understanding of the Supreme is real knowledge. As far as the bodies are concerned, in different castes or different species of life, the Lord is equally kind to everyone because he treats every living being as a friend, yet maintains himself as Paramatma, regardless of the circumstances of the living entities. The Lord as Paramatma is present both in the outcast and in the Brahman, although the body of a Brahman and that of an outcast are not the same. So, aside from a learned transcendentalist, the Supreme Lord himself makes no such distinction. Was pointed out here as Paramatma, Krishna is within everyone's heart. He doesn't stay just within the heart of some people who he likes, and other people who he doesn't like, or whatever. So I'll continue reading 19. Those whose minds are established in sameness and equanimity have already conquered the conditions of birth and death. They are flawless like Brahman, and thus they are already situated in Brahman. So in the purport, Prabhupada says, equanimity of mind, as mentioned above, is the sign of self-realization. Equanimity of mind means seeing all living entities equally. So here it is mentioned, although they are still within the body, because they have purified themselves, they're actually on the level of Brahman, and they're already to be considered as having conquered death. So Prabhupada points out that this is actually the purpose of human life, is to get out of the cycle of repeated birth and death. That ideally one should be able to conquer death even while within the material body. How this is so is that one has to become situated in consciousness on the transcendental platform beyond the dualities of material existence. So there's continuing description of such a transcendentalist. A person who neither rejoices upon achieving something pleasant nor laments upon obtaining something unpleasant, who is self-intelligent, who is unbewildered, and who knows the science of God, is already situated in transcendence. So, how can we understand something of this? Simplest way, I think, to begin to understand it is, in the bodily conception of life, materialistic persons, their consciousness is absorbed in the body and in the bodies of others. Whereas pure devotees, their consciousness is in Krishna and in subjects related to Krishna or in service of Krishna. So of course we are in a very beginning position, but there are descriptions of great devotees in the past who were so absorbed in thought of Krishna that they forgot even whether they were sitting or laying down or eating. It is described that these activities went on practically automatically. Just like our breathing goes on automatically, unless we try, generally, we're not aware that now I'm breathing in, now I'm breathing out. Our heartbeat and all these functions are going on. Our mind is somewhere else. So a perfect Krishna conscious devotee is so absorbed in thought of Krishna that he is practically forgetful of the material body. This may seem very wonderful for us, and of course it is, but that is the actual standard. There's a verse quoted from Chaitanya Charitamrita, which I don't remember, but something Deha Smriti. When forgetfulness of the body is, when one is totally forgetful of the body, then one is understood to be in the transcendental platform, something like that. So in a lecture, I told this little story that Prabhupada tells yesterday. Because here it says, a person who neither rejoices upon achieving something pleasant, nor laments upon obtaining something unpleasant. So the idea is that a person absorbed in transcendence, he's hardly aware or doesn't care much for the bodily or material platform. So when something good happens for him, doesn't care much. Something bad happens, doesn't care much. That so Prabhupada told this story that how someone is just the opposite. That in India there was a rich man and a servant. They both bought lottery tickets. And then it turned out the rich man found out that the servant, his ticket won, his number won. So he informed the servant, "You have won millions of dollars." He was so overjoyed, his heart failed, he had a heart attack and died. So that is just the opposite. A person who neither rejoices upon achieving something pleasant, he was too much rejoicing, so much so he died. So another good example is that Prabhupada, he always was engaged in business, and he was a family man. So for many years, he thought, if I can earn a lot of money in business, because in his childhood, astrologer had predicted, you will have the chance to become one of the top wealthiest people in India. So he must have always been thinking like that. But Krishna has his plan also. I think it is Giriraj Swami always used to like to say, you may have your plan, I have my plan, but Krishna has his plan. So by some circumstances, Prabhupada lost everything in business. And then he took this as Krishna's special mercy, and then he dedicated himself totally to preaching Krishna consciousness, forget about earning money. So that's an example of how it says here, a person who neither rejoices upon achieving something pleasant, nor laments upon obtaining something unpleasant. Perhaps at the time of losing everything, he might have lamented, perhaps, but after establishing the Krishna consciousness movement and preaching so widely, when he remembered back to those times, he didn't lament. He could see that there's no use lamenting for loss. These things, they come and go. One should just tolerate them. There could be many examples in this regard. I can't think of one right now that Prabhupada used, but one idea came in my mind that suppose someone is fighting a soldier in a war and he's engaged with the enemy. So even he may be hit by a bullet, his clothes are torn, maybe he hasn't eaten for days, but he's so absorbed, I want to kill the enemy, that he's hardly aware of these things.
So in the second or the third chapter, he even mentioned that a person who does not rejoice in happiness, nor is it too sad in sadness, is a state of mind.
Yeah.
Is that applicable here also?
It's the same thing. Many of the instructions are repeated again and again. Just like we've heard 100 times, can work, perform your duty, but don't be attached to the result of work.
Question, Prabhuji. So the term Sthita Prajnata
In the second chapter.
Second chapter, is it same as having the Krishna consciousness?
Yeah. Sthita Prajna just means fixed intelligence or fixed consciousness. It's the same thing as being described here.
I don't know where that is in the which chapter, where he mentions about not being super happy in happiness and not being sad in sadness.
Chapter
Well, it's the second chapter.
256.
See, Arjuna asked the question because Krishna was talking about someone situated in transcendence. Then Arjuna asked, well, how can I understand who is actually situated on the transcendental platform? How does he speak? How does he walk? Like that. Then Krishna gives different answers. And basically, in the second chapter, the description is negative. You can understand a person is on the transcendental platform and he is not this, not that, not disturbed, not overjoyed, etc. It is also said he sees gold and pebbles in the street as the same.
Dhun. In Gujarati we say dhun. Dhun is where he is, the mind is so occupied with the nectar of that particular transcendence. And everything else is not even bothersome. It is a wastage of the human mind to think about food, care of the body.
Just like a description when Krishna was in Vrindavan and at night he played his flute, all the gopis, some were cooking, some were sitting with their husbands, some were feeding their small babies. They just put everything down like it is nothing and ran to Krishna. 21. Such a liberated person is not attracted to material sense pleasure but is always in trance, enjoying the pleasure within. In this way, the self-realized person enjoys unlimited happiness, for he concentrates on the Supreme. So there are many statements like this also throughout BhagavadGita. And many times, even impersonal gurus, they will make this point that real happiness is within, not in the external, contacting the external sense objects. And actually, it can be understood in a certain way logically also, that small children, well, it is said in the Shastra that the nature of the soul is Satchit Ananda. The soul is by nature Ananda. The soul is by nature full of Ananda, happiness. It is also said in Vedanta Sutra, Anandamaya Vyasa. The nature of spirit is Anandamaya. So you can see in small children, they're not worried about earning money. They're not worried about their social position. They're not worried about anything, but just with any insignificant thing, they're playing and laughing and feeling ananda. It is natural for them. Unless someone is abusing them or something, unless mother is calling, come here, they feel ananda. So, it's obvious that the ananda is the property of life. And actually, we can also understand that even although we may take pleasure in some external things, it's actually happiness is within. That under certain conditions, you may even get exactly what you were hoping for, but for some reason, you're still dissatisfied, and so you don't feel happy.
Atma Santosh.
Atma
Santosh.
Atma Santosh.
Satisfaction.
Atma Suprasidati in the language of Bhagavatam.
But Prabhuji, what does that entirely translate to? Does it mean being at peace with yourself, or does it mean
means self-satisfied.
Okay.
Self-satisfied. Don't need anything else. Self-satisfied. Satisfied in myself.
Right.
So, Srila Prabhupada often gives this example, as he gives in the purport, of how this is possible. Because he points out that of all the sense pleasures, the pleasure of sexual intercourse is the highest. But he quotes Jamunacharya, a great Krishna conscious acharya. His verse says, "Since I have been engaged in the transcendental loving service of Krishna, realizing ever new pleasure in him, whenever I think of sex pleasure, I spit at the thought, and my lips curl with distaste." Prabhupada explained that he was previously a king. So in that position, naturally, he had limitless opportunity for sense pleasure. But now that he has come to a very high, pure position in Krishna consciousness, when he remembers that, he feels disgust. Oh, how I could have taken pleasure in that.
Isn't that a repetition, Prabhuji? He explains the same previously also. About the same thing.
Yeah, that's explained many times.
Many times.
In the third chapter, when we were reading, I think text 17 in the third chapter, Krishna's talking about how one has to perform sacrifice to please the demigods who will provide all necessities of life. But he says, but, and there's always the but for one who takes pleasure in the self, whose human life is one of self-realization, and who is satisfied in the self only, fully satisfied, for him there is no duty. So as long as one is not on that position, then he must engage in sense activities. Those must be regulated by Vedic injunctions so that he avoids sinful life and being punished for that. But when one is fully self-realized, then he doesn't have to follow any of the regulations because he's already at the perfect stage. So getting back to 5th chapter. An intelligent person does not take part in the sources of misery, which are due to contact with the material senses. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, And so the wise man does not delight in them. So it is interesting here that samsparsaja bhoga means contact of the senses with their objects. That enjoyment is called here dukkha yona. It is actually the birthplace of all miseries.
Very true.
So that one has to learn from personal experience. But aside from being dukkha yona, it also adyantavanta kvanteya, has a beginning and an end.
So,
Man works so hard just to maintain his family, and he spends little time with his wife enjoying. But so much hard work to earn so much money, and the pleasure is a few little time, has a beginning and end. And also in another place, maybe that is in the 18th chapter, 3 kinds of sukha. There's many descriptions of 3 kinds in sattagun, rajagun, and tamagun. So the happiness in rajagun is just what is described here. Vishayendriya samyogat. Vishaya means sense objects, and indriya is the senses, and samyoga means connection with. Yatad agre amrita uttamam. Yattaragre mritopamam. In the beginning, it's like amrit, nectar. Pariname vishamiva. But it transforms into poison. Tatsukam rajasam smritam.
What verse is that?
Somewhere in 18th chapter, I believe. Just look, and there's an index of the Sanskrit verses. Yat, tad, agre. Oh, that's a different one. Vishayendriya, Vishayendriya. So
that's one of the sukhs in the Rajagun. That's one of the things in the Rajagun.
yeah,
Okay.
means that kind of happiness, senses contacting the sense objects, that is Rajagun Sukh. So anyone can think of examples how something can appear to be nectar in the beginning and turn to poison at the end. At least those who have undergone divorce,
Yes.
you can ask them. Divorce.
People who are divorced.
Then they don't understand how it is like nectar in the beginning and poison in the end. So those who are Buddha, means intelligent, nateshu ramate, they don't take delight in that. So there is a higher pleasure available in Krishna consciousness. I was reading something that Prabhupada said in a lecture, very interesting and very practical. He was saying, this was in 1966 in the very beginning, preaching to the very first people. He was saying, if you just chant Hare Krishna seriously, if you just chant, then your desire for these sense pleasures, it will go away. Because you will experience a superior pleasure. He said, if you're chanting, but still you have that desire for sense pleasure, it means the material disease is more severe. See, we are now in a diseased condition of life. This material body is a symptom of the diseased condition of life. So for those who are not able to free themselves from material attachments by chanting the holy name, it's understood that their disease is more tenacious, have to take stronger medicine over a longer period of time. 23, before giving up this present body, if one is able to tolerate the urges of the material senses and check the force of desire and anger, he is well situated and is happy in this world. So this indicates how human life is meant for making this kind of progress. To control the urges of the mind and senses.
Self-discipline. Self-discipline.
Yes. 24, one whose happiness is within, who is active and rejoices within, and whose aim is inward, is actually the perfect mystic. He is liberated in the Supreme, and ultimately he attains the Supreme. In the purport, Prabhupada says, unless one is able to relish happiness from within, how can one retire from the external engagements meant for deriving superficial happiness? The answer is he cannot. It's called a rhetorical question. A liberated person enjoys happiness by factual experience. He can therefore sit silently at any place and enjoy the activities of life from within. Such a liberated person no longer desires external material happiness. This state is called Brahmabhuta, attaining which one is assured of going back to Godhead, back to home. 25. Those who are beyond the dualities that arise from doubts, whose minds are engaged within, who are always busy working for the welfare of all living beings, and who are free from all sins, achieve liberation in the Supreme. The purport, Prabhupada says, only a person who is fully in Krishna consciousness can be said to be engaged in welfare work for all living entities. So Prabhupada often said that Krishna consciousness, preaching Krishna consciousness, is the highest welfare work. It says in the purport, a person engaged only in ministering to the physical welfare of human society cannot factually help anyone. Temporary relief of the external body and the mind is not satisfactory. The real cause of one's difficulties in the hard struggle for life may be found in one's forgetfulness of his relationship with the Supreme Lord. When a man is fully conscious of his relationship with Krishna, he is actually a liberated soul, although he may be in the material tabernacle. 26. Those who are free from anger and all material desires, who are self-realized, self-disciplined, and constantly endeavoring for perfection, are assured of liberation in the Supreme in the very near future. There's only 3 more verses, and the last verse is very important and very prominent. So I'll read 27, 28. Shutting out all external sense objects, keeping the eyes and vision concentrated between the two eyebrows, suspending the inward and outward breaths within the nostrils, and thus controlling the mind, senses, and intelligence. The transcendentalist aiming at liberation becomes free from desire, fear, and anger. One who is always in this state is certainly liberated. Well, we have to keep in mind that this is the end of the 5th chapter. The next chapter is Ashtanga Yoga, description of the Ashtanga Yoga process. So, of course, we've been hearing about happiness within and not caring for the happiness of the senses engaged with the sense objects. And then we come to this verse. It sounds like this doesn't apply to us at all. Shutting out all external sense objects, keeping the eyes and vision concentrated between the two eyebrows. Prabhupada never said to do that. Suspending the inward and outward breaths within the nostrils. How could we do that? And thus controlling the mind, senses, and intelligence. The transcendentalist aiming at liberation becomes free from desire, fear, and anger. One who is always in this state is certainly liberated. So let's see what Prabhupada says in the purport. He says, after explaining the above principles of liberation in the Supreme, the Lord gives instructions to Arjuna as to how one can come to that position by the practice of the mysticism or yoga known as Ashtanga Yoga, which is divisible into an 8-fold procedure called Yama, Niyam, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. In the 6th chapter, the subject of yoga is explicitly detailed. And at the end of the 5th, it is only preliminarily explained. So, a Krishna conscious person, however, being always engaged in devotional service, does not risk losing his senses to some other engagement. This is a better way of controlling the senses than the Ashtanga Yoga. So the whole point is that the Ashtanga Yoga is a mechanical process, very, very difficult, not practical in this age. But the aim is to control the mind and senses. So as Prabhupada points out, that for the devotee whose mind and senses are always engaged in the devotional service of Krishna, then they're automatically controlled very easily. So there is therefore no need to undergo this strenuous process. So the last verse, which seems to be, yes.
What does he not need to undergo? I missed it.
Say that again.
The devotee who is in, you said he does not need to undergo.
Yes. See, the purpose of the Ashtanga Yoga is to control the senses and the mind, to fix them on transcendence. So in Bhakti Yoga or in Krishna consciousness, one is fully engaged in devotional service. With his mind and senses, automatically they are controlled. Doesn't have to try to control them independently by any mechanical process. So 29, a person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the Supreme Lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. So here Krishna is saying that he should be understood in three aspects, in three ways. And if one can understand me in these three ways, Shanti Mritstati, he attains peace. Krishna is the enjoyer, Bhokta. He is the controller and proprietor, Maheshwara. And he is the best well-wishing friend of all living beings. Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam. Krishna says, when you understand me in this way, know me in this way, then you attain peace. So it seems to be kind of like a jump from the description of fixing the vision between the eyebrows and etc., controlling the breathing, and then to this verse. So we can understand that here Krishna is saying that if one can just directly connect to me with this understanding, then automatically he has achieved the perfect result of this Ashtanga Yoga practice. So in the beginning, Krishna said, those who think there's a difference between Sankhya and Yoga, they don't know actually. One who knows that they're actually one and the same, he knows. So one who understands that the ultimate purpose of all practices is to become attached to Krishna, then he can see if I just directly attach myself to Krishna, then I have attained the actual result of all the other practices. So generally those who are practicing the Ashtanga Yoga, they're not Krishna conscious persons, but they're trying to control the breathing, practice sitting processes, sitting postures, and then ultimately fixing the mind within, either impersonally or within the Paramatma. But one who directly takes to Krishna consciousness, he achieves the actual result. In the end of the purport, Prabhupada says, the eightfold yoga mysticism is automatically practiced in Krishna consciousness because the ultimate purpose is served. There's a gradual process of elevation in the practice of yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, but these only preface perfection by devotional service, which alone can award peace to the human being. It is the highest perfection of life. So, just to say a little bit about this last verse that you can see in the temple, Krishna is the Bhokta, he's the enjoyer. Cooking goes on, everything is offered to Krishna. And he is considered the proprietor of the temple. In the greater universal conception, everything actually is owned by God. In the beginning of Ishopanishad, it is said, Ishavashamidam sarvam. Everything in existence is actually owned and controlled by God. Prabhupada gave the example many times that America was just empty land with some Adivasis. Then the Europeans came, killed them all, and put the remaining ones in reservations, and then said, this is mine. But before they came, it was not theirs. And they will also, whoever came here before, they have all died and gone, the land is still there. So it's just an illusion, thinking this is my land. Everything actually belongs to God. And Suhridam Sarvabhutanam, Krishna is the actual well-wishing friend of everyone. Although a man may work hard to provide for his family, but actually everything is being supplied by God. God didn't supply the land, the air, and all other things. All our work would be for nothing. So, any questions? Question. Sounds nice. Why we can't experience that happiness within so strongly that we forget everything else? Why?
Because we don't remember that we are not the body.
What we do is in relation to the body, we are trying to satisfy the bodily concept of life, of being.
But you sit and think, I'm not the body, I'm not the body, I'm not the body. And you're still enjoying unlimited happiness within. You don't care. You can just...
You're trying to be the master. You want people to serve you. You want to serve the body rather than serve Krishna. And you're not totally surrendering, maybe?
Yeah, we are not, she's saying the same thing. We are not actually surrendered, only partially. We're still remaining attached to the external. It requires tapasya.
Is Brahma Bhuta is full of happiness?
Brahma Bhuta prasanatma, na shochati na kankshati. It's the beginning. Mad bhaktim labhate param. Prabhupada always says that Brahma Bhuta stage is the preliminary stage. After Brahma Bhuta, then there's Para Bhakti, pure devotion. So that's also Brahma Sukh.
What's in Brahma Bhuta state?
Means above the body, above matter, there's Brahma Jyoti. So those who are impersonalists, they want to merge in that Brahma Jyoti. They get also a kind of Brahma Sukh. But for a devotee in a personal relationship with Krishna, that is considered very insignificant. Anything? Must be late.
What is Brahma Nirvana?
Brahma Nirvana. Brahma Nirvana Mrichati. It means coming to the spiritual platform. Nirvana means cessation. No more material miseries, no more material experience. You come to the Brahma platform. In Bhagavatam, the absolute truth is said to be understood in three features. Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavaniti, Shabdate. So that Brahman, that platform of Brahma Jyoti, that is the first conception.
But you said that's not the end either.
That's the first.
Yeah, Krishna says, Brahmano hi pratistaham, that Brahman is resting on me. Or in Brahma Samhita, Yasha Prabha Prabhavato Jagadanda Koti. It is Krishna's Prabha. And within that, all the universes are created.
Prabhupada has given us a clear path where you can chant, but not just a chant, but a chant from our heart.
Say that again?
To chant from our heart.
Yeah, of course. It's not just a mechanical process, not just chanting mechanically. Not just set the body in motion chanting and then in your mind go off on another project.
How to not do that?
By doing it. Thing is, when you sit down to chant, first question you have to ask yourself is, you want to chant or not? If the answer is, not really, then of course your chanting will not be concentrated. If you really want to chant, then you will chant attentively. If you don't really want to chant, then of course you won't. First question to answer is, do you want to chant or not?
The mind, the coming chapter is coming. Mind is.
Your mind is,
Well,
of course, so many things mind will take, but then Krishna says in the second chapter, wherever the mind wanders, you have to bring it back. Practice. Practice makes perfect. 100 million births of practice will make us perfect.
Bandhuratma manastasya yanatmaivatma manjita.
That also.
For him who has controlled the mind is the best of friends, but for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy.
If your mind is automatically thinking of Krishna, it is your friend. All right, thank you. Hare Krishna.
Very nice class.